The panel all agreed that the reintegration of child soldiers is vital to peace building. But they say one of the biggest obstacles is the stigmatisation of former child soldiers. In fact, one of the speakers who works in northern Uganda with them refuses to use that term at all, instead calling them returnees. Since 2007, he's helped to reintegrate 1,400 of them.
Child soldiers in Uganda are almost all abducted against their will, which is not necessarily the case in other countries. Nevertheless, when they return, when they escape, barely in many cases, they are still called crazy, called rebels, and shunned.
Other major obstacles identified by the panel include the lack of good mental health support and access to education and training opportunities. So how do we fix it? Here's what Dr. Jamie Van Leeuwen, who works in Uganda, had to say.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've been very outspoken about how some of us in our own country think about Africa. And the images that we have portrayed need to be changed. That Africa is not a charity case. It doesn't need us to come and feel bad for them. It's not about rebel soldiers and people dying on the streets. There's people dying on the streets and there's rebel soldiers all around the world. We've got to change the way that we're talking about Africa and that we're thinking about it and that we're approaching it.
The panel also suggested that more needed to be done to focus on the financial elements of these armed groups. Many of them traffic ivory, diamond and gold in and out of these countries. They say there should be targeted sanctions at individuals, but also at the governments, countries and private companies that enable and support them. There was also calls for the government of Uganda to do more.
The one thing that I really like to see change is for the governments of these countries to be much more proactive about resolving these issues. In the 13 years that we've been working in northern Uganda, the government has done basically nothing about this issue. They talk about it from time to time. There's a big sort of ethnic divide between north and south in Uganda, which contributes, I think, to the lack of engagement. But really, it's the NGOs who are really resolving this issue, despite the fact that everyone's quite aware of the stigma and the trauma.
The panel all agreed that this issue needs a longer-term approach, one that will reach well into the next generation of the families affected. Kate Fisher, CGTN, Washington.